After going through this video, you will be able to explain method and action attributes, why post request method is preferred in form submission, how the post request is processed by a web server, differences between a get and post request method, importance of get requests using various examples. We all are familiar with this form because this is the same form which we have created when we were in our first module of this training. Some of you might have tried to submit the form out of curiosity after filling it, but nothing significant happened, right? This is because one line of code was missing from this entire code. And this is the line of code that makes the form submissions work. So in this video, we will learn about how form submission works and various concepts associated with it. First things first, to make any form submission work, we must add two attributes to the form tag, and these are method and action. We will shortly understand what we mean by these terms and the values they hold. We have already written the code for this form in an HTML file and saved it as form.html. So, when we want to enter this form, we enter the relative URL 127.0.0.1/form.html. This will initiate a HTTP request by the browser, and when the browser receives the response, it simply renders and displays the form to us. Next, we will enter the required information as asked in the form and will submit the form. Now, as we submit the form, a new HTTP request is generated from the browser. This new request which is generated is for the URL mentioned in the action attribute, that is submit.php. This new HTTP request which is generated takes all the data that we have entered in the form. Can you think of how the data goes along with this HTTP request? You may pause the video and think for a moment. And to help you a bit, you may refer to the form here. If you thought the answer as key value pairs, you are right. The keys are the names of the form elements like password, gender, interest, and so on, and the values are the values that are re-entered by the user. Basically, these are key value pairs that go with the HTTP request. So this was all about the action attribute. Next, we have the method attribute. There are two types of method requests. One is get and the other is post. We will learn about these requests shortly in detail. First, we will see why in the case of form submission we prefer a post request instead of a get request. Here on the left side, we have a form in which we have used a get request, and on the right side, we have used the post request. When the get method is used for form submission, the browser adds the submitted form data to the end of the new URL as key value pairs, where the keys are the names of the form elements and values are the values entered by the user. We can see in the URL, sensitive user information is being displayed. This information can also get stored in the user history, which is not a good thing as it can be exploited by hackers. Now, if we look at the case where we have used the post request, we can see that after submitting the form, no information is added in the URL. This makes it more secure. Due to this very reason, post request method is used in most form submissions, but get method has its own advantages, which we will shortly discuss why and where get method is preferred. So, what happens on the server side when the web server receives the HTTP request? This happens in multiple steps. First, we know the HTTP request that goes to the web server is for a PHP file, that is submit.php. As we know, PHP is a server-side scripting language. The web server will start looking for this file on its computer and will start executing it. As the file is executed, the web server converts the key value data into an associative array that can be accessed through PHP. Depending on the type of method attribute used, the associative array is stored in $get and $post superglobal variables, which we can use to access these data. We have already discussed in detail what superglobal variables are in the previous topic. We can further use this user data to store in the database. Now, how to store the data in the database, we will understand in the next topic. Now that we have understood the method and action attributes, we will continue to explore more about these request methods, starting with the difference between them. As discussed earlier, in get request, the user data gets visible in the URL upon form submission, which makes it less secure. While in the case of a post request, no data is visible in the URL, making it secure. The data in case of a get and a post request is stored in $get and $post superglobal variables respectively. Generally, most of the requests are get based. This means when we type any URL 127.0.0.1/form.html, or when we click any anchor tag, the request generated is always get based. While in case of form submissions, we can choose between a get and a post request. Now you might be curious to know, if post request is secure, then why do we need to use get request at all? To understand this, let us make a few searches on the internet. To begin with, let us first search for web development internships. If we notice the URL, we can say that here a form submission is taking place. This is because the information which we entered is being displayed in the URL along with some additional information that Google uses for its internal use. Next, let us search for our all-time favorite song on YouTube. Again, we can see in the URL the search query that we entered is being displayed in the URL. If we search for a different song this time, different search results appear. And similarly, if we search any product in Amazon, or if we want to search our favorite sneakers on Myntra, we will observe the same thing. So, based on our findings, we can say that in case of search, a web page's content is totally dependent on the search data, that is the form data. So, where we want to share some URL with our friends, GET requests are of great importance. Like here, we have these smartphones which we have shortlisted after applying several filters. So if any of our friends open the link which we have shared, they will be able to see the exact phones with all the filters pre-applied. This is possible only because Amazon, along with all the websites that use search specific information, they use the GET method in their search functionality. Had it been a post method, our friends would have always landed on the homepage of Amazon. In a nutshell, in forms, GET method is used when a user needs to retrieve some specific information based on the submitted form data, while in all other cases, the post method is used. So that's all about form submission in this video. Up next is an exercise. Please make sure that you complete this exercise as the content of the next topic is dependent on this.